Welcome to True Crime Pulse, where we explore some of America's most shocking and heartbreaking crimes. Today we travel to Boulder, Colorado, a town famed for its liberal culture and scenic beauty. But in early June 2017, this peaceful backdrop became the setting for a horrific crime that would shatter lives. This is the story of a twisted affair that spiraled into murder. At its center is Paul Barstow, a 36-year-old Boulder native. Paul had successfully balanced his career as a respected software engineer with his personal life. Driven by his passion, he dreamed of developing a revolutionary app called Lemon, named after a trailblazing writer, which he believed would redefine intimacy and technology. Outside of work, Paul was an artist who loved painting Boulder's natural landscapes, and he was a devoted father to 2 young children from a previous marriage. Despite the demands of single parenthood, he always made time for them. Friends described Paul as calm, thoughtful, and dependable, a man who took comfort in routine. Yet in the days before his death, those close to him noticed an increasing sense of unease. His secret relationship with his sister-in-law, Angelica, had been a source of comfort and guilt. Complicating matters further, Angelica remained close to her husband, Jason, Paul's younger brother. As Paul prepared for a weekend getaway with his children, including a stay at a cabin near Estes Park, his excitement was tinged with anxiety. He had planned to visit the Stanley Hotel, famous for inspiring The Shining, and maybe even take the kids on a ghost tour. But tragically, Paul would never make it on that trip. On the evening of June 5, 2017, as Boulder settled into the calm warmth of early summer, Jason, unable to reach Paul, decided to check in on him. When he arrived, he found the front door ajar, unusual for security-conscious Paul. Inside, the house was unnervingly quiet, with signs of a struggle in the living room, an overturned chair, scattered papers, and a shattered coffee mug. Jason's heart raced as he moved toward the bedroom, where he found his brother's lifeless body on the floor, a rope still around his neck. Frozen in shock, Jason called 911. The operator instructed him to wait outside until police arrived. Sitting on the front steps, Jason stared into the street, struggling to hold back tears. Within minutes, Boulder police arrived, their flashing lights drawing the neighbors' attention as the nightmare continued to unfold. Detective Laura Reynolds, a seasoned investigator with 15 years of experience, was the first to arrive at the scene. Known for her no-nonsense style and sharp instincts, Reynolds quickly sensed that this was no ordinary case. Stepping into the house, she took in the chaotic state of the living room: an overturned chair, scattered papers, and a shattered coffee mug, all hinting at a struggle. But it was the scene in the bedroom that confirmed her worst suspicions. There lay Paul Barstow, his face pale, with a rope still wrapped tightly around his neck. Even for an experienced detective like Reynolds, the sight was unsettling. The crime scene team moved swiftly, documenting the room, dusting for fingerprints, collecting samples from the rope, and carefully bagging the broken mug pieces. Reynolds noted the position of Paul's body and observed defensive wounds on his hands, along with bruising around his neck and face, clear signs, she believed, of a violent struggle in which Paul fought for his life. Yet not everyone on the team agreed. As the investigation unfolded, a divide began to form. Dr. Matilda Chang, a meticulous forensic pathologist, raised the possibility of suicide. She pointed out that the rope could have been self-tied, and that the disorder in the living room might reflect Paul's actions in a moment of distress. According to Dr. Chang, people in deep emotional turmoil sometimes stage scenes before taking their own lives. This disagreement sparked tension, with Detective Reynolds and her team convinced of foul play, while Dr. Chang and her supporters urged a closer look at all possibilities. The investigation slowed as they re-examined each piece of evidence from multiple angles. As days passed, media coverage intensified, with local outlets like the Denver Post questioning if the police were pursuing the right leads. This public scrutiny only added to the anguish of Paul's family, who were desperate for answers, demanding that the police uncover the truth, whether it pointed to murder or suicide. The first person of interest soon emerged: Paul's sister-in-law, Angelica Barstow. A 34-year-old Boulder resident known for her eccentric personality, Angelica ran a YouTube channel with nearly 100,000 subscribers, Ferryworks, where she shared her alleged interactions with fairies and spiritual beings. The channel drew considerable attention, though much of it was negative, with viewers often leaving critical comments accusing her of fabrication. By June 2017, the constant negativity had taken a toll on Angelica's mental health. Angelica's marriage to Jason, Paul's younger brother, had been rocky for years, with friends and neighbors noting their frequent arguments. Angelica was often seen berating Jason in public, and on one occasion she humiliated him by forcing him to strip in public and declare himself a loser. Her volatile behavior soon placed her firmly in the investigators' sights. These incidents cast Angelica in a troubling light, portraying a woman visibly unraveling under the pressures of her personal life. As the police initiated their investigation, they were well aware of her struggles, and Detective Laura Reynolds, an experienced investigator with an intuitive edge, began scrutinizing Angelica's potential motives. It was no secret among those who knew her that she had felt confined and unhappy in her marriage to Jason. For her, the secret affair with Paul, Jason's older brother, had offered an intoxicating escape from the daily burdens she carried. It was a relationship marked by both passion and secrecy, hidden from public view, yet revealed by the explicit, longing texts that had been exchanged between her and Paul, messages uncovered on his phone. However, as Paul started to distance himself, likely feeling the weight of guilt and the increasing risk involved, Angelica's own emotions seemed to spiral, shifting from passion to a profound sense of betrayal and despair. When Detective Reynolds brought her in for questioning, Angelica's reaction was unsettling. She sat across from the seasoned investigator with an air of calm that seemed out of place, almost unnatural under the circumstances. She openly admitted to the affair but resolutely denied any part in Paul's death. "The ferries told me he was pulling away," she murmured, almost as though speaking to herself before locking eyes with Reynolds. "But Lady Luna Lovegood, as my witness, I would never hurt him. I loved him." The statement gave Reynolds pause. Angelica's tone was steady, almost casual, as if discussing a disagreement, not a tragedy. The detective noted how her eyes flicked around the room when pressed further about her connection to Paul, as though she were searching for answers in her surroundings. Yet, despite this composed facade, as the questioning deepened, Angelica began to show signs of agitation. Though she continued to deny any role in Paul's death, her alibi was a muddled story with vague references and gaps. When Reynolds pressed her for details, Angelica became defensive, snapping at one point, "I don't have to tell you everything. The ferries will." Her erratic behavior only fueled the team's suspicions, though the evidence tying her directly to Paul's murder was largely circumstantial. Her increasingly unstable actions made her a central figure in their investigation. Meanwhile, attention soon turned to Jason Barstow, Paul's younger brother and Angelica's husband. Jason, though well-liked in Boulder for his easygoing charm, was known to have difficulty staying in one place for long. He had drifted between a series of jobs, never quite finding his niche or a consistent sense of purpose. His relaxed demeanor was often the subject of gentle mockery among friends, but it had become a sore point of tension in his marriage to Angelica, who grew exasperated with his lack of ambition and his tendency to avoid serious commitments. This lack of stability contributed to frequent public arguments between the couple. Neighbors and friends had witnessed several outbursts from Angelica, who would berate Jason over his perceived failures, often in strikingly personal and humiliating terms. Despite his usually calm nature, Jason's relationship with his brother Paul was tinged with resentment, not only because of Paul's affair with Angelica but also due to a deeper-rooted envy. Paul, by all appearances, had a successful career, a life filled with purpose, and, in a twist of fate, had even been involved in a secret relationship with Jason's wife. To Jason, his brother seemed to embody everything he lacked, and this unspoken rivalry cast a shadow over their interactions. When questioned by Reynolds, Jason was initially cooperative, though visibly anxious. He claimed he had been at the Sink, a popular local bar, on the night of Paul's death, watching a Rockies game and socializing with friends. However, his alibi began to unravel when police followed up. The bartender, a Boulder native known for his sharp memory, couldn't recall seeing Jason there that night, and none of the regulars could confirm his presence either. The inconsistencies in his story made Reynolds skeptical, and as she delved deeper, other aspects of Jason's relationship with Paul came to light. Though Jason typically downplayed the affair's impact on him, describing it as a family issue, he preferred to keep private. His resentment toward his brother had evidently been simmering for years. Friends and family described subtle but unmistakable signs of tension between the two brothers, with Jason often retreating into his easygoing facade whenever confronted with the reality of Paul's relationship with Angelica. During his interrogation, Jason's attempts to appear unbothered about the affair wavered under Reynolds' scrutiny. "Yeah, I was mad," he admitted with a forced chuckle. "But Paul was my brother. Sure, we had our differences, but I would never hurt him." His voice was measured, but Reynolds noticed his hands, which fidgeted constantly as he spoke, a clear sign of his discomfort. She pressed him on his turbulent marriage, particularly the loud confrontations he and Angelica often had witnessed by neighbors and friends alike. Jason shrugged these off, saying, "Angelica's got a temper, but it's nothing serious. We argue, then make up." "Who doesn't?" His response, while nonchalant, only deepened Reynolds' suspicions. His casual attempt to downplay their arguments did little to mask his true feelings. And, as he shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropped to the floor whenever Reynolds probed him further about the night of Paul's murder. With both Angelica and Jason firmly in the spotlight, Detective Reynolds and her team knew they were working against a ticking clock. The media had already begun to scrutinize the case, and Paul's family was demanding answers. Both suspects, Angelica with her unpredictable behavior and Jason with his deep-seated grievances, represented potential motives, yet the police needed concrete evidence to move forward. Reynolds understood that any misstep in the investigation could mean the difference between justice for Paul and a mystery that would haunt the family and the town of Boulder for years to come. Despite inconsistencies in his story, no concrete evidence linked Jason to Paul's murder. While his motive rooted in jealousy and anger was evident, the police lacked the solid proof needed to pursue him as the primary suspect. However, Detective Reynolds and her team kept a close watch on him, scrutinizing his every action as the investigation pressed forward. The final suspect in focus was Paul's ex-wife, Linda Barstow. Known for her fiercely protective nature, especially towards her children, Linda, aged 48, had always maintained a controlling presence within the Barstow family, a trait that often sparked tension. Despite an outwardly amicable divorce, insiders knew that unresolved issues lingered between Linda and Paul. Her tendency to meddle in Paul's affairs, showing up unannounced at his home and attempting to influence his decisions, became a growing concern for the police. Her history of favoring Jason, Paul's younger brother, added another layer to her complex role in the family dynamics. Linda's past romantic involvement with Jason when he was barely 18, though a poorly kept secret, had fueled a long-standing rivalry between the brothers. When Linda was questioned, she appeared composed, yet defensive. Detective Reynolds probed into her relationship with Paul during the months leading up to his death, but Linda insisted that she had long moved on, focusing solely on co-parenting their children. "I was over him a long time ago," she stated emphatically, adding that their interactions revolved around their kids, Ward and Salter, and nothing more. Yet Reynolds remained skeptical. Linda had a pattern of exerting control over Paul's life, and there were whispers that she disapproved of his relationship with Angelica. Linda's friends even revealed to the police that she often voiced disdain for Angelica, whom she saw as unworthy of being part of their family. When she learned of Paul's death, Linda quickly pointed fingers at Angelica, insisting to the detectives that she had always doubted her intentions. In her interview, Linda's resentment came through clearly as she described her views on Angelica. "She was never good enough for Paul." And I told him that, Linda confessed, seething as she spoke. While her motives, protectiveness, and disdain for Angelica were apparent, Linda denied any involvement in Paul's murder, emphasizing that she would never harm him, especially for her children's sake. Still, her strong personality, lingering resentment, and complex relationship with Paul kept her firmly on the radar of the investigative team. But like Jason, there was no hard evidence tying her directly to the crime, leaving detectives in need of something more conclusive to move forward. The investigation seemed to be reaching a standstill until a neighbor's discovery on July 12, 2017, changed everything. That morning, a neighbor out walking her dog, Mary Sinclair Varlitz, noticed something unusual in the Barstow's trash bin: a piece of torn fabric stained with blood. Startled, she immediately notified the police. Detective Reynolds and her team arrived promptly, securing the blood-stained shirt fragment, which matched Paul Barstow's DNA. This single piece of evidence shifted the course of the investigation, directly countering the theory of suicide and suggesting a violent altercation had taken place. Forensics confirmed that the fabric matched the shirt worn by Paul, solidifying it as a key clue in understanding the events surrounding his death. With the discovery of the shirt, Detective Reynolds sensed a breakthrough. The timing and placement of the discarded evidence indicated the killer was likely close to the family and familiar with their routines. With this fresh lead, the detectives circled back to re-examine their suspects and meticulously cross-referenced their whereabouts following Paul's death. The discovery of the bloodied shirt marked a pivotal moment in the case. It provided the concrete evidence detectives needed to move forward, effectively ruling out suicide and narrowing their focus on a specific individual. On July 15, 2017, after weeks of intense investigation, Detective Reynolds and her team identified Angelica Barstow as their prime suspect. The 34-year-old sister-in-law of Paul, Angelica, had maintained a 5-year affair with him, an affair that became a source of emotional turbulence. Her erratic behavior, particularly her ferry-obsessed YouTube channel and apparent fixation on otherworldly beings, added to the detectives' suspicions. Additionally, her alibi unraveled under further scrutiny, despite initially claiming she had been home with her children. Neighbors reported seeing her car, a Chevy Malibu, parked near Paul's house around the time of his death. The investigation had taken a dramatic turn, with the detectives now zeroing in on Angelica as they pieced together the final parts of the mystery surrounding Paul Barstow's tragic end. Angelica Barstow's behavior had become increasingly erratic, raising alarms among her friends and family, who had observed her emotional volatility over the months leading up to the tragedy. Her YouTube channel, Ferries, became notorious for its bizarre content, where she expressed a deep belief in fairies, presenting them as real entities in her life. This obsession only served to underscore her unstable mental state. On the morning of June 15, 2017, law enforcement arrived at her home to execute an arrest warrant, prepared for what they anticipated would be a tense confrontation. When the detectives found Angelica at her kitchen table, she appeared disheveled and anxious, wearing only a bra, her hair unkempt, and her eyes wide with fear. Upon informing her of her arrest for Paul's murder, her reaction was one of sheer disbelief. Her complexion drained of color, and tears streamed down her cheeks as she protested, "I didn't do it. The fairies made me do it." This peculiar claim only served to deepen their concerns regarding her mental health, raising more questions than answers. Following her arrest, Angelica was taken into custody, where a thorough search of her home revealed critical evidence linking her to the crime. Among the findings were personal belongings of Paul's, along with additional pieces of rope that matched the one discovered in the trash at the crime scene. As detectives interrogated her, Angelica maintained her insistence that she was being manipulated by fairies, a statement that seemed increasingly irrational to the investigators. Throughout her arrest, she displayed a bewildered demeanor, unable to grasp the gravity of the situation. Her emotional outbursts and strange justifications only strengthened the belief among the police that she played a significant role in the murder. Detective Laura Reynolds characterized the arrest as a pivotal moment in the investigation, a crucial step toward uncovering the truth. The arrest of Angelica Barstow sent shockwaves through the Boulder community, leaving residents stunned by the revelation that a seemingly devoted mother and wife could be implicated in such a heinous act. As the investigation progressed, attention shifted toward understanding the motives and mental state that could drive someone to murder, with every new detail about Angelica's involvement in Paul's death raising eyebrows and stirring discussion throughout the town. The trial of Angelica Barstow commenced on August 7, 2018, at the Boulder County Court, drawing an audience eager to witness the pursuit of justice for Paul Barstow. The courtroom buzzed with tension as attendees filled the benches, each eager to see how the proceedings would unfold. The case garnered significant media attention, with local news outlets closely covering each development, from the opening statements to the closing arguments. Angelica's trial unfolded amid a backdrop of intense emotions and dramatic courtroom scenes. The prosecution, led by the formidable District Attorney Rachel Stone, painted a compelling narrative suggesting that Angelica had meticulously planned and executed Paul's murder. Known for her tough stance on violent crimes, Stone highlighted Angelica's deep-seated jealousy and unstable mental state as central to the motive behind the horrific act that claimed Paul's life. She brought forth evidence of the affair and underscored Angelica's increasingly erratic behavior, including her bizarre assertions that ferries had manipulated her actions. In stark contrast, Angelica's defense attorney, Harold Green, presented a different narrative. He argued passionately that his client was suffering from severe mental illness and was not in full control of her actions at the time of the crime. Green described Angelica as being in the throes of a psychological breakdown, providing evidence of her ongoing mental health struggles, her obsession with ferries, and her erratic behavior, all pointing to a woman who was not in her right mind when the tragic events unfolded. As the trial progressed, Paul's family was present each day, their faces etched with sorrow as they listened to the heartbreaking details of his murder, including the evidence of the bloody rope and the unsettling revelations about Angelica's troubled past. The emotional toll on the family was palpable, with each piece of evidence serving as a reminder of their loss. After several days of testimony and impassioned closing arguments, the jury deliberated and ultimately reached a verdict on August 14, 2018. Angelica Barstow was found guilty of first-degree murder, a decision met with a mix of relief and lingering sadness by Paul's family, who felt that while justice had been served, the pain of their loss remained. On August 21, 2018, the judge sentenced Angelica to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This decision reflected the severity of her crime and the profound impact it had on Paul's family. Many viewed the verdict as a fair punishment, though some argued it was excessively harsh, given the complexities surrounding Angelica's mental health issues. For Paul's family and friends, the trial and subsequent sentencing provided a sense of closure, albeit one that could not erase the grief of their loss. The case served as a tragic reminder of the complexities and often devastating consequences that personal relationships can harbor. As life in Boulder began to return to a semblance of normalcy, the impact of Angelica Barstow's actions continued to linger in the hearts and minds of those affected. Following her conviction and sentencing, Angelica was transferred to the Colorado Department of Corrections, where she would serve her life sentence. Within the prison system, her life became a series of ongoing psychological evaluations aimed at addressing her mental health issues. While her specific location within the prison remained undisclosed for security reasons, it was known that she received regular counseling and medical care to manage her condition. Meanwhile, Jason Barstow, Angelica's husband, faced the daunting task of rebuilding his life in the wake of the scandal. At just 29 years old, he sought to stabilize his personal and professional life while dealing with the fallout from the case that had captivated the community. The public scrutiny had taken a toll on Jason's reputation, making it challenging for him to find stable employment in Boulder, where the case had been closely followed. Linda Barstow, Paul's ex-wife, also navigated the aftermath of the trial, her relationship with Paul's family strained by the public fallout, and her vocal criticism of Angelica, which had rendered her a controversial figure. Linda remained active in community affairs, despite facing backlash for her role in the case. She concentrated on her career and personal life while attempting to navigate the complexities of her situation. In summary, the trial's aftermath brought significant changes to the lives of those involved. The case left a lasting impact on Boulder, prompting reflections on the intricate nature of personal relationships and the challenges of mental health. While Angelica Barstow faced the consequences of her actions, the others affected by the case worked tirelessly to rebuild their lives and regain a sense of normalcy in a community forever altered by the events surrounding Paul Barstow's tragic death.